Hello, everyone. Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. It is Sunday. We're nearly at the end of the weekend. I hope you're having a very good one wherever you are watching or listening to this around the world. We're over that hump in the bridge as well on the right side of it, shall we say. Now only 6 days away from Arsenal returning to action in the Premier League, but there is still plenty of football to talk about. Some Arsenal players in action last night for their national teams. We'll discuss that in today's show. Look ahead to what's going to be happening today. Big day for England, big day for Lee Carsley, certainly on the back of that disastrous result and performance against Greece. He needs a win today in Finland. Declan Rice to start. No Bukayo Saka, of course. We will talk about that in a second. Got lots of questions. Well, I've got lots of comments, reaction from you. First to the Arsenal women's game against Chelsea yesterday as the pressure increases on under fire. Jonas, Eidevall. Got lots of reaction from the Mikel Merino's comments about potentially players going on strike as well. Really interesting response to that. So we'll talk about some of that in the show as well. But let's start with Bukayo Saka, shall we? Who we discussed yesterday, saying that I hope that common sense prevails here, and when England fly out to Finland, he is not going to be on the plane. And common sense, thankfully, has prevailed, and he hasn't flown out on the plane. He has returned to Arsenal to carry on treatment on this injury that he suffered in that defeat against Greece in midweek. Now, we still don't know the severity of this injury. I would suggest Arsenal are going to do all they can, and Mikel Arteta is going to do all he can to ensure that stays the same between now and Bournemouth. If you go back to when Martin Odegaard picked up the injury before the Tottenham game, and Mikel was trying to act like there was a chance he could actually be involved against Tottenham, which we knew was never going to happen. But Mikel kept up that facade the whole way in the build-up to that game, so much you almost started to believe him that Odegaard may potentially have a chance, even though deep down we knew that wasn't going to be the case. We'd seen him getting on the private jet, flying back to England in that protective boot and on crutches. And I would suggest we're going to have the same sort of cloak of secrecy around Saka in the build-up to the Bournemouth game. I might be wrong. This is just a hunch, I'm saying. But it just feels like one of those injury stories that Arteta is going to try and just keep going to keep the Bournemouth coaching staff guessing ahead of the game. But the key thing is common sense has prevailed, and he has returned back to Arsenal. Now, Lee Carsley did briefly mention Saka in his press conference ahead of tomorrow night's game when he was speaking to reporters yesterday, and he said Bukayo would have been close, but it would have been unfair to take a risk with him. He's a positive person, and I expect him to be fine. Now, obviously, that sounds pretty positive, as he said, when would have been close to play today. So you would think if that's the case, and hopefully by next weekend, he should be fine. But if this is a hamstring injury, and again, we don't exactly know if this is a hamstring injury or not. It's not being confirmed by England. Certainly, I haven't had it confirmed to me by Arsenal. We think it's a hamstring injury. All we know is Lee Carsley said afterwards he felt something in his leg, but it definitely looked and felt like a hamstring injury to him. If that is the case, maybe next week would be too early. But certainly from those comments from Carsley, I feel a little bit better about what's going on with Bukayo. Now, even if he has to miss the Bournemouth game, then you've got Liverpool a week after that, which is obviously a hugely important game. You've got Shakhtar Donetsk in the Champions League as well. But that Liverpool game, you want Bukayo Saka playing for that game. So if it's a case of not taking any risks against Bournemouth and going with, moving Martinelli to the right and playing Sterling on the left, or playing Sterling on the right and keeping Martinelli on the left, something like that. If that's the best option, then do it. But obviously, if Bukayo Saka's fine, then I'm sure he'll play against Bournemouth. But it's great that he's returned home. It would have been awful if he had taken him to. It just would have made no sense whatsoever. And certainly from what I hear about Lee Carsley as well, he is quite a on-it bloke. And it didn't sound like something he would do in terms of taking a risk on Bukayo Saka. So it's good news for Arsenal. He is back with them being assessed. And it doesn't sound from Carsley's statement that it's too bad. Just to repeat those words again, Bukayo would have been close, but it would have been unfair to take a risk with him. He's a positive person. I expect him to be fine. It's quite nice when he's saying it would be unfair to take a risk on him. I mean, it just sounds like he's saying that would be unfair on Arsenal and Mikel Arteta to take a risk on him. And that's a decent thing to say, because not every England manager has ever acted like that when it comes to Arsenal players or players of other clubs as well. So Saka back at Arsenal. Fingers crossed he will be fine. If not for Bournemouth, then definitely for Liverpool. Elsewhere, the Martin Odegaard story rumbles on. Sky have reported that he has not suffered a setback. As I said yesterday, when I was been putting the feelers out about the Odegaard story after the rumours broke on Friday that he had suffered a setback, I wasn't able to confirm that they were not correct. but I was unable to confirm that they were correct, if you see what I mean. So, but Sky have gone even further now and said that there is no setback for Martin Odegaard, and Arsenal are still hoping he could be back by November. It's always been the date in my head. I'm not going to repeat myself too much because that's what I said yesterday, but anything before sort of mid-November in my mind would be a bonus when it comes to Martin Odegaard. If it runs into December, it's only a couple of weeks, then so be it. But all you want with Odegaard is when he gets back, he is fully fit and ready to go, and he does not suffer any sort of recurrence of the injury that ends up putting him out deep into next year, into 2025. So it's just about making sure when he is ready, he is 100% ready. But Sky is certainly reporting yesterday that setback story was not correct, and that he is still on track to potentially return at some point in November. If that is the case, and obviously that is very, very good news for Arsenal. Okay, international-wise, obviously big game for Declan Rice, big game for England today. Do need to win, do need to respond well. I mean, that was such a shambolic performance against Greece. I mean, who would have thought, seriously, who would have thought that playing one midfielder and then a bunch of wingers and number 10s in front of him and no striker would have caused England problems in that game? I mean, it was such a bizarre thing for Lee Carsley to do. I remember we'd seen that at times sometimes of Arsenal, when you'd look at a lineup and you'd have sort of just one midfielder in there, and then you squeeze Emil Smith-Rowe in or something like that, and you think, oh, that looks really attacking. But then when it actually got out on the pitch, it never really worked. This was even worse because there wasn't even any sort of strikers. There was no focal point, and it was just a bunch of players running around completely out of position with no structure whatsoever, and so just wide open spaces for Greece to attack every single time they had the ball. How it was only 2-1, how England got to within a couple of minutes of actually getting a draw from the game, I will never know. It was just an absolute shambles of a performance and a team selection from Lee Carsley. And Declan Rice, understandably, I thought struggled in that game, which is absolutely no surprise when you've literally got one player sitting there in front of a defence and then just nothing else around you. It was just such a bizarre thing from Lee Carsley to do. It seems like we're going to actually have a more structured team today, and that is going to be a big plus, you would think, for England in a game they absolutely now have to win. Declan Rice obviously going to be starting in that game. I think that's the only Arsenal involvement today, international-wise. There's a few players playing yesterday. Mikel Merino came off the bench for Spain in their game. I think it was a 1-0 win against Denmark. David Raya started that game, kept a clean sheet. Another clean sheet for him. So good news for Spain. I think Jakub Kiwior played as well for Poland. They lost against Portugal. Kiwior came on at half-time, I think, in that game. Had a decent second half showing, by all accounts. Kiwior lost his place in the team recently for Poland. I can't remember who they were playing. I think it was Scotland. He had a really poor performance by the sounds of it in that game. Got hooked at half-time and has lost his place in the team since then. But it seemed like the manager sort of turned back to him yesterday, brought him on at half-time, and he played pretty well, judging by accounts. So maybe he'll be back in the starting 11 next time out for Poland. But that's the latest when it comes to internationals. Just fingers crossed Declan Rice can come through this okay. Then we've got a couple more games on Monday and Tuesday. I think the Brazil game overnight on Wednesday morning, so early hours of Wednesday morning, it's the last game that we have to endure in terms of Arsenal fans, hoping that our players come back unscathed. But Declan Rice is the only one in action today. All right, quickly on to the Arsenal women now. Really poor result again yesterday. I thought the second half, I thought they probably deserved at least a draw in this game. Obviously, first half they were poor, defensively all over the place early on. Got themselves a goal just before half-time that gave them a bit of hope. And the second half, I thought they were by far and away the better team. They dominated the majority of the game. They attacked pretty well, created some good opportunities, couldn't score, and ended up losing the game 2-1. On the face, you look at it and think it was probably a little bit unlucky. They deserved a little bit more from the game. But it is another defeat. It ends a horrible, horrible week for Jonas Eidevall. The draw against Everton, the drubbing in Munich in the Champions League, and then this losing at home to Chelsea. Look, it's no disgrace losing to Chelsea. Chelsea beat most teams they play, although this was their first win at the Emirates Stadium. But on the back of the week that Jonas and the team has endured, it felt like a big result. They needed a win yesterday. Jonas needed a win, and it didn't happen. And it's only going to increase the pressure and the scrutiny on him. He's got massive, massive week. If he stays in the job, and I'm not saying he's going to get fired straight away, I just don't know. But if he stays in the job and he survives the pressure that is growing on him, which you think he probably will for now, he's probably still just about got the support of the hierarchy in the club. He's got Valerenga in the Champions League, and then I think is it West Ham this weekend. They've got to just really, really need some wins in those games to just lift the pressure. At the moment, he was speaking after the game. He was asked whether he's been given any assurances over his job. He said, I give absolutely everything today and in preparation for this game. I think you can see that the players gave absolutely everything on the pitch. that is part of what you can control as a coach. That is the part that I can ask from the players as well. I just need to focus on the next match and the things that I can control. He was asked about the supporters and the frustration that is growing within the fan base over the job that he is doing at the moment. He says, I think we should see how much character and heart the players have for the club. And that, I hope, gives supporters belief. And then I fully understand that people are disappointed when we don't win football matches. We are also really disappointed when we don't win. I am really hurting. The players are really hurting. We want to do better. I fully understand. Just as you're allowed to show emotion when you win, you're allowed to show emotion when you lose, because they invest everything. They travel, they support us, they give us absolutely everything. So I totally understand their frustration that we don't win football matches. I mean, that's it. It's just about winning now. And he needs a win so much if he's going to survive this, Jonas Eidevall, because there's no doubt that scrutiny is increasing, the pressure. You just see it on social media. You know, during that game yesterday, after the final whistle, you can see the dissenting voices. You can hear them. They're growing louder. He needs to silence those with some wins and some good performances. Like I said, I didn't think they were bad yesterday. Certainly in that second half, they played well enough to potentially get something from it, but they didn't get anything from it. And you've got to win football matches if you're an Arsenal manager. And at the moment, he is not doing that. This is what some of you guys have had to say about the Arsenal women and about Jonas. Chris says 3 games in and the WSL is all but gone. There needs to be change. And really, the change should have happened after the end of last season. It's going to be much more difficult now to find a replacement. Tune says, this may sound harsh, but I don't really feel sorry for Jonas. Whatever happens, he is the architect of it, coupled with some horrific decision-making in his lineup. The women's season will be over before it's even started. Adam asks, with the Cronkies looking at the women's team at this current moment, are they showing the ambition for the club that we are giving them credit for? They stuck with Arteta and it worked out so far, but they surely couldn't have known he'd become this good a manager in his first job. The women's team looked like the United team under Ten Hag, a bit aimless and lacking a real steal or threat and not competitive at all at the top. Given the powerhouse Arsenal have been in women's football, the ownership should show some real ambition to compete and make some tough decisions. I'm not sure they've made thus far. They've certainly showed a lot of ambition. Look at the money they're throwing around at the moment. Look how much money they spent to bring in Russo. They had a world record bid in the summer turned down as well, didn't they? So they are showing ambition in terms of the money they're spending and the time and the club are putting into the women's team, no doubt about it. On the whole Jonas thing, if they believe in him and they still believe in him, then they're going to keep him. They did that with Arteta and it has paid off. I'm not saying that will happen with Jonas if they stick with him, but I think they are an ownership model that does like to show some faith in their coaches and the decisions they've made. Whether that's going to be enough for Jonas at this point, who knows? But I do think the Cronkies and the club are certainly very ambitious when it comes to the Arsenal women. You just have to look at some of the decisions they've taken in terms of the stadium move and the amount of games they're playing there and the money they have invested. Charlotte says keeping Jonas shows a complete lack of ambition from the club. He should have gone last season. Curacao says the earlier Jonas is sacked, the sooner our girls will regain their bearing. Is so mediocre and not the level required for a title chasing team. Chelsea just changed managers, yet our results against them remains the same, and that seems to be the overwhelming feeling, certainly in the comments on here, but certainly on social media as well. Most people thinking that time is up for Jonas Eidevall and the Cronkies need to make a change. Personally, I would suggest that is probably the case as well. Feels like the time is really running out. It felt like the time in the summer was a good time to make a change as manager. Didn't happen. They stuck with him. This season has not started well, so we'll see if they continue to stick with him or not. Right, this is on the players' strike that we talked about yesterday. Mikel Merino talking about it in his press conference after the comments made by Rodri and players like that in recent weeks about it. Mythological says, I'm going to declare my opinion. Who cares? Well, we all do. So thank you very much for putting in your opinion. It says, but as a working human who owns a small business, I agree that the pressure on these high-paid soccer professionals is massive. They are not gladiators from the Roman era, must be respected and played intentionally per match. Burnout is not an option. Southwest Guna says, hi, Charles, great content. Thank you very much. With reference to the comments on player strikes, at the end of the day, if they choose to go on strike, they won't get paid whilst on strike. I'm sure a sensible resolution will be negotiated and agreed, as I'm sure the players won't want to lose money. Mike says, I don't see why it matters how much players make regarding going on strike. If their health is in danger, they have a right to take action. It's not their fault. We all love the game and are willing to pay to enjoy it. The fans will not be out of pocket and people need to have compassion. Money is irrelevant here. Jerry says, no matter how much they earn, they are still human beings and shouldn't be treated like machines. The number of games they are playing is ever increasing. There needs to be some actions. I agree. I do think there needs to be some actions. I agree. They are playing too many games, certainly at the very, very top level. I just wonder, as I said yesterday, how easy it will be to sort of sell the strike to other players who are potentially not playing as much as the elite players, but could still be impacted by the strike, if you see what I mean. But I think something definitely does need to happen in terms of the fixture calendar, because it is just getting more and more demanding, and just that you just look at it and think, how are these players ever going to get any sort of rest at the moment? And I don't think FIFA and UEFA are helping whatsoever. So the players certainly need to be brought into the conversation. That is absolutely the bare minimum at this point that needs to happen, and I'm sure it will. Whether it then moves on and those conversations don't lead to anything, and the strike does happen, we'll have to wait and see. But it's certainly an interesting one to keep an eye on, and certainly, judging by these comments here, it's one that everyone has a strong opinion on as well. Right, that's it for me this Sunday, everyone. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it as always. Have a very good end to your weekend. I'll be back tomorrow to do it all over again. Anything you want me to discuss in tomorrow's show, you know the drill by now. Get down into the comments, give me a question, give me your opinion, pull some of them together and get them included. We can really start focusing on the weekend and Bournemouth. The Premier League is very nearly back. Still a few days left of the international break to go, though. Have a good one, everyone. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.